He should be here. And I can ask everybody to mute before Paul kicks off. That's including ourselves. How do I mute ourselves? Down there. Yeah. Thank you very much, Paul, for offering to do this presentation. And further ado, can I hand the meeting over to you, Paul?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. What I'll do to make sure I get through everything is take questions at the end, if I may. So hopefully I'm about to share a screen with you. So could a couple of people give me a thumbs up if they can see an aerial photo? Yes, you can. Brilliant. Okay. This talk is about Wapley bushes. What I'm going to do is to tell you a bit about the background to the nature reserve. Then I'll talk about just one of our projects, and then about our biggest current problem. So this is the nature reserve in last summer, summer 2020. The property was bought by Donington Parish Council in the 1970s. Originally, at that stage, there were big plans by Housing Corporation to build about a mile further south on the south edge of Yate, and this would have become an urban park. But the development stopped at the railway, and it was left as public recreation land, but not really managed very positively until a few of us got together and started a bit of guerrilla management, and then persuaded the parish council that it was a good idea, and eventually this became the first local nature reserve in what was then North Avon. The Donington Parish Council looks after what you might call the landowner's responsibilities, and the conservation aspects are managed by Wapley Bushes Conservation Group, with advice from the Avon Wildlife Trust Southwold Group, South Gloucestershire Council and local experts. By the way, I don't count myself as being a wildlife expert. I'm primarily an organiser rather than an ecologist, so when it comes to the questions, please be kind to me. The main parts of the property are two species-rich meadows, particularly the lower meadow there and the upper meadow here. It's just the other side of the railway line from the built-up area of South Yate, and there's a footbridge that goes across just out of sight on the left-hand edge of the picture. So you've got the two meadows there. You've got the various woodlands around here, and you've also got the Wapley Common and the part of it where the orchard is here. So I could talk for hours about these various parts, but you'll be relieved to hear that I'm not intending to. Instead, I'm going to talk about just one project, the Orchard for the Future, as we called it, and about one problem, ash dieback disease. So the good news first, if you like. The project. The Orchard for the Future project started in 2011 when we received a grant from South Gloucester Council. Farms in our area used to have small, what they called home orchards, but the vast majority of these have been grubbed out or neglected. This community orchard habitat creation project, because it's wider than just the orchard, as you'll see, aims to reintroduce a range of heritage varieties of shops that are no longer available, varieties of fruit that are no longer available in the shops. So there will be, for example, apples like Ashmead's Kernel, Hunt's Duke of Gloucester, and Puckerup Pippin. we've got three groups of traditional apple trees on the orchard strip alongside the common, each of them including one crabapple tree as a universal pollinator. We've planted several. This is when we were. These pictures are when we were first starting it off. We planted several other traditional fruit varieties, such as pears and medlars, in a couple of nearby locations. You can see the medlars on the left here. Medlar jelly was a medieval winter food, and it was a popular Victorian Christmas conserve if you were affluent enough. We haven't grown enough yet to find out what they taste like. We've also rehabilitated some original plum trees that we think had been neglected since about the 1940s. The plums are a local variety too. They're Frampton Magnas. After suitable pruning, they now produce quite a heavy crop. So they're on the original site of what was a domestic orchard next to some miners' cottages. So this is what the orchard looks like now, on the right, and there's some typical crop. Obviously not at this point in the season, but that's what we're that's the sort of thing that we're getting on the main part, the apple part of the orchard. But this is not just about the fruit trees. This is a whole habitat creation project, and the grassland management has been important too. Following a suggestion by our local owl expert, Ian Maguire from Wild Owl TV, we only cut a third of the grass each year by rotation. The uncut grass falls, becoming a grassy mat, which is an ideal environment for small mammals like mice, shrews, and voles. These small mammals have become a food source for owls, owl takeaways, if you like. And that's attracted tawny owls to nest in the nearby woodland fringe. The cutting regime has also encouraged butterflies, moths and bees, and the range of flower species we're seeing is increasing. So on the left, we've got a meadow brown butterfly on cornflower, and on the right, we have a 6-spot burnet moth on knapweed. To encourage pollinating insects, we installed 3, well, depending what you want to call them, either bug hotels or pollinator palaces along the hedge line, made entirely of recycled materials. Under strict supervision, the local brownies and guides furnished one of the bug hotels, and that was really successful. They even insisted on their bug hotel having a roof garden and a coffee bar. We also found it surprising just how large a piece of paving slab 2 brownies can carry between them. Just a few days after we installed the bug hotels, leafcutter bees started laying eggs in the holes that we drilled in the uprights, as you can see on the left. This is literally within about 4 days of putting them in situ. The leafcutter bees put pollen or nectar in as food, then they lay an egg, then they plug the cell with a circular section of leaf. That's why you will see trees near leafcutter bee nests with nice regularly punched circular holes in them. Who needs a hole punch? So they plug the cell with a circular section of leaf. Then they lay another egg, put in another leaf plug, and so on, probably about half a dozen deep, half a dozen cells deep. If the larvae start to hatch, but it's a rainy day, the weather only affects that first batch. The remainder hatch over a period of days, so they're spaced out by their depth in the holes. Other insects have been frequent visitors to the orchard too, and the last couple of summers, the apple crop in the orchard for the future has been the best yet. Leafcutter bees are solitary bees. They don't produce honey, they don't have a queen, and they don't live in nests or hives. In contrast, the one on the right is a white-tailed bumblebee, a big one, but they do live in nests and have queens. In the UK, we've got around 250 different species of bee, 24 kinds of bumblebee, only one species of honeybee, but 225 or so different solitary bees. And all these are essential to pollinate plants, including the food that we eat. The Orchard for the Future has led on to other work with young people. We organised a local beaver pack furnishing a similar bug hotel in another local park, in association with Yate Town Council. And then following on from some ecology session, what they call Welly Wednesday sessions for the little ones in one of the local primary schools, we organised tree planting and wildflower meadow planting sessions with the older junior school pupils, and we're now planning a bug hotel for the school grounds. So we've got a mixture there of sort of cornflower and corn chamomile. So we were encouraged to put this whole project in for a particular award scheme, and we won the Bees Needs, I've got to say that carefully, the Bees Needs Award from DEFRA and Keep Britain Tidy for our work on the Orchard for the Future project. So that was the project. Now let's talk about the problem. Up in the woods, the problem is ash dieback disease, which has arrived at Wapley bushes, and major tree works are having to take place. Ash dieback is a fungus that came from Asia. It swept Europe and is now sweeping across the UK, and it kills around 95% of affected ash trees. There is no cure. The best remedy is at the moment is replanting with other native species to keep the right habitat for birds, woodland creatures, insects, fungi, and other plants. Ash dieback particularly affects Wapley bushes because most of the tallest trees in the woods actually are ash trees. If you look at this picture, in the foreground, we've got the branches of a healthy ash tree, but behind it, the same season, we've got the branches of an infected ash tree, which has got a very bad case of ash dieback disease. So fix in your mind what that one looks like. But let's go through a bit more fundamentals. First of all, how do you identify an ash tree? Ash trees come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You've really got to look at the leaves to sort them out. They have compound leaves with 3 to 6 opposite pairs of light green oval leaflets with one extra terminal leaf on the end. So the whole of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what looks like leaves, that is one leaf, a single leaf. The leaves, they're a bit in a way like sunflowers. They can move in the direction of sunlight, and sometimes, if you look very carefully, the whole crown of the tree will lean in the direction of the sun. Another thing that's a bit peculiar about ash trees is that the leaves, in general, fall while they're still green. In autumn, their ash trees are very easy to spot because their seeds, as you can see here, hang in bunches of, they're called ash keys, and they look like a bunch of keys. And they stay on the tree long after the leaves have fallen. These are winged seeds, but they only have a single wing, not like the 2 wings that sycamore or maple helicopter seeds have. If you actually chuck them up in the air, they will come down, but they crash land a bit faster than maples and sycamores, which tells you a bit about why helicopters don't just have one rotor wing. So what are the symptoms of ash dieback? It affects the vascular system, the circulation system, if you like, the bloodstream. It inhibits the tree's ability to draw nutrients up into its upper branches. Some of the leaves wilt in summer, turning black or brown, but strangely the black leaves may not drop off as quickly as the usual autumn leaf drop. And in fact, later in the winter, the wilted leaves can look like black versions of the bunches of keys, and you have to look quite closely. Is that a key, or is that a bunch of decayed leaves? Sometimes the trees produce lots of spindly upper shoots, as they have here. Dodington Parish Council, as the owners of Wapley bushes, well, we started off the conservation group felt that it was that we had ash dieback disease, but we didn't know the scope of it. We had the conservation group had a very small scale survey done and discovered how serious it was, and then the parish council had a much more detailed survey done throughout the property to find out what trees are affected. There's no imminent danger, but the priority is, before we get into a dangerous situation, is to make the infected trees safe where they're near the main paths and areas that are particularly heavy use. So in October to November last year, around 24 major ash trees were reduced to about 6 meters in height. So they can. The idea is that they can still provide valuable habitat while they decay, habitat for insects, birds, lichens, etc. This is one tree we had to tackle earlier because it's so big and so close to a well-used path. The top has been shaped into what's called a coronet cut to retain even more habitat. And that's actually the tree that we saw, the infected tree that we saw in the earlier slides. So the object of monolithing, as it's called, is to retain as much habitat as possible while the replacement trees are growing. These photos are the same tree that had the coronet cut, just 6 months after the tree surgery, and you can see it looks a bit like a tropical plant almost, with the amount of regrowth there, and you can imagine the amount of habitat that is providing for the time being. The main trunk will die off eventually, but it's got a few more years life in it yet, and by that time, hopefully the replacement trees will be of a decent size and providing the replacement habitat. So let's have a look at the scale of this. Where we are, for those who remember, the nature reserve was alongside the railway line, which is up there. Hopefully you can see my red arrow. This section down here is the ancient woodland part, and there are 24 major ash trees there, which have been monolithed this autumn gone, and doubtless there are going to be more to be dealt with in later years. But those are real big uns. Now we've got a different problem here. Where it says C3 in a circle, that is a plantation of more than 500 semi-mature ash trees. It's called the Centenary Wood, which was planted in 1994. I planted some of them. You can see on the right, you can see how tall and spindly they are compared to the mature trees. We were recommended to remove these too, and work has also been carried out there. If you remember this drone photo from almost at the start, the area that I've now circled in red here is the Centenary Wood, and you can see how dense that actually was. mature trees around the edges, and these are just, although it looks dense, these are just semi-mature. That's the result of the spindly trees in full foliage. So what does it look like now? Yes, precisely. So you can see that the core of this has been taken out. The parts that haven't been done are mixed species parts, where we've just dealt with the ash, but the whole of these was ash. The whole of these sections that have been taken out was as where where they've been taken out completely was wholly ash trees.
Yep.
Projects have a nasty habit of not always going according to plan. The monolithing and the felling have been completed, but because of the very wet weather conditions and our contractors being affected by COVID, there's still a lot of tidying up work to do in the centenary wood. 90% of the timber has been removed, these semi-mature ones, but you can see there's quite a lot of timber still on the floor there, and that's the 10% or so that's being kept deliberately for some community projects that we want to start up. If you think sort of a bit like men in sheds without a shed. So woodland based things, and we have ideas about some things that we can do within that space in amongst replanting. But you will see that we've also managed to monolith some of these thinner trees, a few more than I thought we were going to be able to. They were healthy enough to climb, which they needed to do to monolith. So we're keeping that amount of habitat there, particularly up towards one end of the wood. As well as having to tidy up the timber here, and there's quite a lot of brash, stray branches here, and there's big piles of that outside the photo. We also want to make the grounds safe, so we're actually going to be having the stumps ground down to below the surface level. But the ground conditions a bit further down the woodland are not good, as you can see. I told you it was wet. We decided that we now need to leave the area to dry out over the spring and summer, and we're going to do the final restoration works there around September before we start replanting. The ground is so wet that even the small scale mobile plant that's used for grinding down the stumps, we can't risk taking that up across the lower meadow, which is the principal access route, because that lower meadow is also a very ecologically sensitive area. If it wasn't publicly owned, it would be registered as a triple SI, Site of Special Scientific Interest. It's certainly in that sort of area. The other thing is, although we finished the actual tree surgery, we want to minimize disturbance to nesting birds. So we can do this adequately, do this in September. It just doesn't look pretty. By then we'll also have had another set of surveys done to determine whether there are other trees, probably more of the big ones, that actually need tree surgery done on them. But there is good news. We've already planted the first 330 replacement trees. We planted them in the main woodland by volunteer effort over the previous 3 winters. So the sorts of trees we're planting include oak, small leaf lime, white beam, field maple, common alder, hazel and wild cherry, all traditional native species. We are hoping that we can persuade not just our own volunteers, but perhaps some other community groups and so forth to come in and join us on some of the replanting work mornings. And we're aiming to plant at least another 250 trees during the winter, during next winter, not the one they're just emerging from, obviously. So we're going to try and get a variety of eco groups and non-eco groups, and also particularly young people's groups involved in that, so that young people can take a bit of ownership of it. So just to sum up, there's the new and the old in contrast. Recently planted new trees in front, and recently decapitated tree in the middle, more new ones at the back. So summing up, ash dieback disease is our Wapley equivalent, is the same scale as the Great Storm of 1987 that devastated so much of the woodlands of the southeast. But unlike that one, it's not sudden, it's slow motion. And we'll be seeing the consequences of ash dieback in other parts of the woodland for years. If you've got ash trees and you haven't seen it yet, you will soon, coming to a tree near you soon. But over the last 5 years, to the end of next winter, we aim to have planted nearly as many trees as we cut down, so that the woodland and its flora and fauna will be preserved for the future. So that's it. Thank you very much. The end. So I'll just unscreen share a minute if I can. Right, I'm back.
Paul, thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very much for that really interesting chat. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to some exotic fruit from your orchard sometime. You said it's fruit that I'm not going to be able to buy in the shops.
Well, the apples are nice.
Are they? What do you call them? What do you call them?
Oh, we had the pucker up pippins and the ashmead kernels and this sort of thing.
They make good cider.
I don't know yet. We haven't quite got that quantity.
I want to thank you on behalf of the 250 different species of bees that we have in the country. Thank you very much for looking after the bees. And I'm sad to hear about your ash dieback.
Well, we knew it was coming. We've known for years. It was just a question of when, and keeping an eye out and doing something when it did arrive. And it's the partnership working between the conservation group and the parish council, which is allowing us to deal with it. So all the big expensive work is being funded by the parish council, but based on the ecological advice from the specialist reports we got in, and on a good deal of organisation by the conservation group and members of the AWT locally. So it's really been teamwork.
Right, could I ask anybody, has anybody got any questions to ask of Paul, please? Judith, can I unmute you? Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself and pose your question to Paul?
Right, thanks, Paul. That was brilliant. My one question, okay, you're felling the ash trees. It's a little bit like black spot on a rose. You've got to clear all the debris, otherwise it's still in the soil. Is it anything like that with the fungus from the ash tree? Do you have to sort of clean all the soil of the debris?
No, it's an airborne fungus. Right. We know that once it reaches a location, unless unless a tree is one of the 5% that is that has got a genetic resistance, you're going to lose the rest anyway. So it's not a question of slowing the spread. There was an idea about 5 years, up to about 5 years ago. The national recommendation was to minimise the disturbance. So, for example, we weren't doing coppicing on any of the ash trees, which we had been previously, to try to minimise the spread. Now the entire area, it's rife in the entire area. You will have seen the numbers of ash trees that are being taken down along the main roads for road safety reasons as well. So that gives you a good idea of the geographic spread. We are in the ash dieback heartland around here.
Do you know if there's any in the park?
You would need a proper survey.
I'll have to ask Phil.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Does anybody else have any questions? Mary, could you unmute yourself and pose your question?
Thank you very much for that. We in Leap Valley, Friends of Leap Valley, we unfortunately do have ash dieback too. We've had 5 trees taken down recently. What I've learned particularly from you is the bit about the coronet cut, because they took some trees down here a couple of days ago and I wondered why they'd left the tops like that. So to have that explanation that is for extra habitats and so on is really very interesting.
Yeah, it's doubling and more the surface area of the top of the tree, and you've got to provide all the little crevices, homes for insects and this sort of thing. And of course that's bird food. The insects are bird food.
Right.
It's a very recent technique. In this country, it's been going 5 years or less, and it's something that the tree surgeons across the country are starting to recommend more and more. It doesn't take that much time to deal with it, because they've cut the tree off, they've done the heavy work, and they're up there already. So once they're used to doing it, you can produce something that looks quite nice. And you saw on that one that looked a bit like a South American rainforest tree, you saw how much regrowth there was right up near the top. It seems to have encouraged that as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So we'll see what additional, whether that one was typical when we see the regrowth this spring. I mean, out of the 24 trees, we had to take about half a dozen of them down to close to ground level. They weren't safe to be left as monoliths, but the other 18 or 20 there, I'm hoping will be there for quite a long time. And as they decay, of course, although what it will also do, as well as helping provide habitat, it slows the carbon release. Where a lot of what we cut down will actually wind up as fairly quick carbon release, because it's been sold off and goes. We don't know what happens to it in the end. So I suspect it will be. A lot of it will be effectively firewood, or effectively be chipped up for various uses. But at least with what we've got left under our control, we can reduce the rate of carbon, of CO2 release, and hopefully. As our new young trees grow, we're going to be capturing carbon, and we're doing that already.
certainly our experience is there's no problem in the wood. The wood disappears very quickly. Very large ash tree was taken down last week, and I walked past it today, and all the logs have gone.
Well,
That's mainly gone for firewood.
If you find yourself in the position of actually having to commission a large scale, a larger scale than you've got a tree surgery, it is worth asking the tree surgeon, how much would you give us for that?
Right.
So you will get some discount off the price of it. On the other hand, you may well want to be selective about what you want left, and make it clear that you're leaving this as habitat piles and the like. So what we've actually done, the material that's gone off site is all from the semi-mature trees. The really big logs, logs from the mature trees, have all been left on site, and those, from our previous experience, those will gradually decay, and we will get again massive amount of habitat benefit. And we're basically telling people, no, you can't have that as firewood. But some people are cheeky. They had the timber stacked up ready to be collected, and they had Harris fencing up round it, and people were taking the Harris fencing down and going in and picking their own firewood from this massive, a heap the size of a couple of houses. Cheeky so-and-sos.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, go on. Right.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Marianne.
Marianne?
I was going to ask the same question as the first speaker, but the fact that it's very wet there, does that have any effect on the dieback? Is there any evidence that very wet areas are worse for the dieback, or doesn't it make any difference?
From our observation, no, it doesn't make a difference. That's the ground condition. It doesn't seem to affect the trees. So we're having the same amount. If we just compare on the mature trees, if we compare between the trees the same size in the wet areas and the dry areas of the wood, it's big enough to do that. I haven't noticed any real difference between it. Where those red dots were on the map, in fact, most of the red dots were on the drier ends, the uphill end. I'll right, by the way, right at the end, because I can't talk and type at the same time, I'll pick up. I've had at least one question come in on the chat, so I'll pick those up in a moment, if I may.
Thank you.
Paul, can I ask, where did you get your trees from, and how tall are the trees that you've put in? Are they whips, or are they a bit bigger?
They're a little bit bigger. They're sort of about the 4 foot 5 foot mark, depending on species. Some are smaller whips, some are a little bit bigger, and basically, am I allowed to do an advert? But I will anyway. We for many years, unless we can't get a particular species, we've been buying the woodland trees. We've been buying from Landcare, Old Sodbury, and they're absolutely brilliant. So
did you pay for them by a grant, or?
In effect, yes. We get a regular grant from Doddington Parish Council, an annual grant, and we can get other bits and pieces of grant money towards specific projects. So we're in the fortunate position that we have a reliable core core income, but obviously on something the size of this is far beyond our resources. I mean, our core income from the parish council is £2,000 a year. What you've seen for that one major hit of tree surgery work is about £18,000 worth, 18,000.
Mm. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah.
I just wondered, it's a basic question, but if nothing is done to these trees, do the top branches just fall off? What happens if nothing's done? Like one might be out in the middle of the country, say, would it be daft to walk underneath it?
Well, put it this way: if you see one that's really gone, I wouldn't walk underneath it. But then I wouldn't walk underneath it, particularly when the wind's blowing, because it might not be, it may not be that the upper branches go first. They may stay up there long enough to act as sails, and they may bring down the bigger stuff that's further down, and that is that is what is likely to be dangerous. So that's why people want to get in there. But having said that, having spent a lot of time over 30 years wandering around Wapley Woods, I've only ever seen one branch fall near a person, and that just grazed their back. It's quite surprising, but we have always had notices up saying donkey's years, don't go into the woods in high conditions of high wind. So don't be ultra afraid of it, but it does need to be coped with, particularly if you've got lots of ash trees to get together. Statistically, you need to do something. So the semi-mature ash trees, for example, they're not near the main paths, but they are an area that is heavily used by kids, by young people, and that's why we had to intervene big time there quite quickly.
Paul, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please, Reg.
Outside your area, so apologies. Driving down Goose Green Way today, I noticed a number of trees down along there had been felled. Do you know if that's the same problem?
I don't know. They were felled. They're on South Gloss Verge. They were felled by South Gloss, and it has been said that that if there had been local consultation beforehand, it would have been quite something that could have been made quite a nice sculpture, which, as Rich well knows, is our local speciality.
A number on the left and the right had gone. I don't know if Tony or Alan know why. No,
I don't know why. I haven't heard about it.
Very odd. Okay, I'm sure we will find out. Thanks, Paul. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions? We have Matthew.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Paul. You right?
Yeah.
Are you leaving any areas for natural regen, or are you replanting all?
We are replanting. We're replanting all. The reason being that this is at the insistence of the Forestry Commission. We've had to get both South Gloss permission and Forestry Commission permission for it, and Forestry Commission won't even count the 330 trees replacements we've already planted, because they were planted before they knew about it.
Okay, have you got a Forestry Commission management plan on the site? Is that why they're involved? Is it, or?
Yeah. Not a detailed management plan, but it's particularly the ancient woodland there. That's got a an area-wide TPO, not just specific trees.
Right. Okay. I only asked because I sit on Tiverington Parish Council, and we're dealing with some of our ash trees in our woodlands, and we're sort of looking at maybe leaving some areas to see what happens. I don't think we're with the restrictions you've got with regards to Forest Commission and so forth, but we're considering leaving a few areas to see what comes back up. There's lots of sort of small oaks and small beech probably sitting there waiting.
Yeah, there could well be, but where we've planted was where we planted in advance is areas that were woodland clearings,
right,
where there weren't numbers of young trees coming up. But the area of semi-mature trees was basically is completely ash.
Right. Okay.
So what you're going to get coming up there is more ash.
More ash. Which won't last long.
Well, the trouble is they'll probably grow to about 20 foot before they get affected. But there we are.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul.
Do you have any more questions? Could I ask a question, please, Paul?
Yeah, please, Jim.
You mentioned that the young trees that are growing now will be affected. So do you see this is going to go on forever, this problem, or is it like these things that disappear by itself eventually?
Well, if you take out the trees that are affected, you increase the proportion of trees that are resistant gradually over many years. And there's also research going on, particularly in Scandinavia, about trying to identify resistant trees. But that is a slow process, and the problem is if you identify a relatively small number of resistant trees, what you're in effect doing to get them to grow rapidly is you're cloning them. And any cloned tree, if you get a whole bunch of the clones going into one particular area, then you're going to find that they're susceptible to the next nasty disease that comes around. So I think somebody, as Pauline just said on the chat, sounds like not in our lifetime. I think that is quite that about sums it up. I did this talk to a group of Explorer Scouts. Is that the right name? It used to be Venture Scouts. Explorer Scouts, I think now. And I was asked an interesting question: is the future of this about genetic manipulation? And I thought for a minute. I said, no, it's about genetic selection. But we can't put it this way. I would not try to replant ash in this country until there is a really solid stock of a varied stock available of genetically resistant ash, and not all one clones of one another. Now, this is also why we're doing such a big mixture of trees. Somebody is probably sat there thinking, why the dickens did you plant so many ash trees all in one place? There is a simple answer to that. They were free. I gather what it was South Gloss used, it was about in the transition between North Avon and South Gloss, I think. They used to have their own tree nursery. And the trees that we had for that work day, and we put in 800 trees in the morning, by the way, 80 odd people and half of them kids. But the trees we had for that work day were all the trees that were left in the council nursery, and if we hadn't had them, then they would just have gone to waste. They would have been destroyed at the time. As it is, we've had about 25 years of use out of them. We've had a nice habitat, and it's actually one of the things that I regret most about this is that we're losing temporarily losing one of the sites of Wapley, which is that when you've had snow and you go up there, the sloping field next to it is full of kids screaming and sledging. It's the best sledging field for miles and miles around. But if you go up there and you go in that area where the semi-mature trees were, and it was like Narnia. The only footprints apart from your own were the wild creatures and the birds, and the snow deadened all the sound. So unfortunately we've lost that, but that will start to come back in a period of years. So that's something that well, put it this way, I have a very eco-interested granddaughter, and this is the sort of thing that she will see again if I don't.
Wow. Well, Paul, thank you very, very, very much. I think you've told us all we need to know about ash dieback, and certainly my knowledge of ash dieback has increased 500% in the past hour. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very, very much. It remains, unless there's any more questions of Paul, I think you told us all we need to know. I think I'll close the meeting unless anybody's got anything they'd like to say while we're all together. No? Okay, well, thank you once again, Paul. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for coming along and listening. And we'll see you again. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's been good to see you all.
Thank you very much.
Let's hope we can meet up in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.